Welcome everybody. First of all, with a l'chaim. If you have a l'chaim next to you, the l'chaim, v'sholem v'tzlacha rabba, and all in yonim, v'gashmis v'ruchnias, all the brachas that you need. L'chaim. We're going to try to keep this nice, short, and sweet to the point. We want to just start. We're going to start with a video of the Rebbe, giving us a little chizuk and a little clarity on what it means to be a busy person, a working person. And all of us, I think in this case, almost all of us are not full-time learners or in the learning departments of different organizations. And the learning that takes place on a daily or at least consistent basis is something that we can definitely be inspired by. So we have to thank Benji Pearson for this clip, and Rabbi Shneir Archorn, take it away.
There are those fortunate enough to have Torah study as their sole occupation. But even those with a more mundane profession can become full-time scholars, regardless of the hours they put in.
Afal pi was Tera achas lekulonu. Und sagt sich in Hilchis Talmud Tera, dass nicht nur was sie gegeben geworden zu jedem, nur sie echt gegeben geworden zu jedem, na jeder ist hier mechuyev zu lernen. Und lernen gorke pschute, nicht jetzt sein der mit, was gibt Geld aufs Docke, als Zweiter soll lernen. Wo durch bekommt achillig, bedugme wie Socher Zwullo. Ich darf al pikein, das geht achile kech beterose shel Yisachar, aber ich zwul und muss haben akvi sitim betero und bechol jem. Nicht jetze mit Limud atero liprokin. Und a viele bechol jem, ich nicht jetze mit temal atog, nur es muss sein lechol apoches jemal valaylo, einmal ba jem und einmal balaylo. Und mich יש ביode, der was auf die Schulchan Aruch hat mehr Zeit, ist nie der Pshat, die Zeit steht Schusse und merkt mit dem, was will, nur darf das anfühlen mit Limud Atera. Und auch derich, wie das ist in Kamus, als hat die Kamus von Zman, darf das anfühlen mit Limud Atera, al derich zeg het in Nechus, in Nefen Limud Atera. Hat sich Kischreinis, was der Eibeschter hat ihm gegeben, der Kischrein auf Havana Kipschuta, Beschitchius, und auf Havana zusammen mit Tamkus, Vechulu in Amkus kann sein Darge achar Darge, darf sein ungefüllt, alle seine Kischreinis, in der Judäische Taxidis, alle seine Klei HaMeach, darf sein ungefüllt sein, das ist Meach HaChochme, sein Meach HaBine, sein Meach HaDas, HaMoke, ungefüllt mit Tero, das ist in andere Werte, Limud, Behavone, Behasoge, Behamoke, Kechol, Hoefschiri, zu welcher konnte grechen. Und wir Omor seinen in der Ruf Mechuyev, sei Socher, die, was gehören auf die Schulchan Aruch zu Anhoge von Yisachar. Und die, was auf die Schulchan Aruch gehören zu der Anhoge von Zvulun, weil man viele Zvulun muss haben, ein Jinien von Limud Atera und ein Nefen von Kvir Sitim Letera, aber das wird bei ihm ein Jinien shel Kwa. Aber das ist nicht bei Benafshe. Bei Meile ist der Kovua, is alpidin is nicht bottle, wie viel soll nicht sein in Kamus, als bei viel Alpischulchan Aruch ist, kann jetzt sein wie Sitim Betera. A miut Zmane bekamus. Im Mitzad Ruva, dass bei ihm in einem Nefen shel Kvius, der Dina Kovua lei bottle, ve adrabe, dass maschpia al kol hayem kule. Okay, sicher hayedua, als man darf einsehen und voneinander sprechen, die 15 Minuten, oder die halbe Show, oder die Show, was lernt Teiro, auf der alle 24 Show von dem Misles, also ich nicker sein in sein Schlafen, aber das schläft Ayid, was dem Tag vor dem Schlafen und bemerkt von dem Tag hat gelernt Teiro. I das nicker in dem Eifen, wie schläft. Bis war nicht, wer sagt in dem Meime von Balayla, Ahun oder der Schnass am Melech, als sie da Bishas Ashina, die was liegen in Teiro, ist Bishas Ashina, Pun Basei Zui, die ist a Teiro, und wie sie ja du, bei kamen Menschen, was bei Chalemi, was nicht verrentet geworden, Kaschis, was hat gehabt, jeder hat gelegt schlafen. Nun auf der Ruf, gedei echt einzuspannen, die Kirche ist auf viele, wie gerät Friede, Limud, Atere, ist doch jeder Mechuye. Auf viele derbe steht in Tchilas Avidosse. Als halt noch nicht bei Limud, Atere, Lishmo, warum noch Akotten bedarf. Alachas kam, wie kam, eben noch weniger davon, ist von deswegen, es heißt mir nem echt, als hat der Heize, von Kinas Sefer im Kipschuto, was demult die Tarbe Chochma. Wo der Pfarrer ist Chechet, dort, wo es wer gebracht in Gemorre, Kina Sefer im Tarbe Chochma, wer gebracht in Gemorre in Boabasse, wer gebracht in Seher. Wenn gehe in Gemorre in Boabasse, wird das gebracht, wenn gehe zu Limud von Tenekeshe bis Rabban. Und das hat der Chechet auch gebracht, wenn gehe in dem Michte verbunden mit Jud Schwad. Wo der Reben ist hier, der Reine hat sich gekocht in Chinuch Altares Akedisch und hat echt gehofft und gemont und gegeben Keches, als Kol HaBoim HaHilchen wie Quesel, und Kol HaBoim Achra, wa viele Lachre, Chaim Chayosse, Balmodel, sollen sich echt abgeben bis zum Messias Nefesh, auf Chizuk und Bisus, wa Afotos von Chinuch Altares Akedisch.
Okay, powerful words, obviously from the general, from the boss, and obviously something for us all to take to heart. The mechazik. Also, an interesting story with the Rebbe that I remember. I always grew up with. My father was a shliach in Long Island. Before he was married, he was already doing lots of mitzvahim there as a young bacher, leading into his dating days. And when it came time to getting married and going to Kollel, so when he asked the Rebbe told him more than once, but also told him when going not to go to Kollel, but rather to continue with the shlichus, because the Tzarech Tzibur Deiches Talmud Torah, but Medarf Beda, very strong. The Rebbe stressed Beda. There's even a video by Dollars a few years later where the Rebbe stresses to him again that Medarf Beda. And I always grew up, and although, and this is not coming from me, my father would always mention it, that was learning his thing he probably would have done for the rest of his life in that way, not necessarily, but the constant learning with himself or with a chavrisa over the phone or something in my house, that was something definitely had an effect on me. Not that I, up until now, haven't really been doing, but definitely see the effect that it has in my home, in my life. We're just a few blot in, but definitely a kriyas benachsha, like Rebbe just mentioned, is something that I think in myself, if I can talk for myself, definitely is being is definitely there, at least in a little way. Moving on, I want to keep this short and sweet. We want to call upon a dear chaver, a cousin of mine, Rabbi Yossi Katzman, to please share with us a few words, inspire the Elam. Rabbi Yossi.
What's up, everybody? Good evening. I think first, what's definitely apropos is to extend our Karas Tov to the people who headed this initiative, with Zevi and Yosef Tovia Lefkowitz, for giving us this little push, and Shneir Eichhorn, obviously, for always making sure that the videos are available for us, and definitely to Yossi Rosenberg and to Avram Kogo for all they do for our class, extended all around the world. So when Yossi asked me to talk a little bit tonight about for this mini Siyum of ours, and he asked that we should try to connect our Gemara to the Nyani Diema and the things that we always remember from when we're children. A few of the very specific directives that the Rebbe always gave us was Daf Levin mit Zeit, and to connect it to Nyani Diema and Parshas HaShavua. So in our Gemara, the last Masechta and the last mission of our Perek, we talk about the Sanhedrin and some of the mechanics. I decided not to talk about Edom Zayimim. It's definitely more of a difficult subject to talk about, but in the last mission it discusses the mechanics of the Sanhedrin and the very famous line which we all were taught as children about what is a bezin chavlanis. Wicked bezin is a bezin that executes either somebody once every 70 years or 7 years, and it goes on to the fascinating discussion about what Rebbe Akiva and Rebbe Tarfon said, that if they were around when Bezdin was still sitting and dealing with Din Nefashis, they were around during the Churban Bayis Rishon, but because of the chaos surrounding the end of the first Beis HaMikdash for the 40 years before the Churban, they actually left Lishkas Hagazis and they sat somewhere else, and they did not get involved because they didn't have the toikif of the Bezdin, so they did not do Din Nefashis. But Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon said that if had they been involved then, they would have never gone on and actually put someone to death, which is definitely quite fascinating. And what I definitely thought of right away when we learned this, the Sanhedrin, is this week's Seder about Yisrei is, the first is a very simple connection, but I think it's very important and powerful. The famous Medrash, and it says himself, the Sanhedrin, that Yisrei, when Pari called him his 3 advisors for advice of how to deal with this tragic calamity that the Jewish people were procreating too quickly, he called his 3 advisors, Bilam, Eiv, and Yisrei. And Bilam said to kill the Yidden, and Bilam obviously was killed as because of that. Eiv sat quietly, and he was punished with a life of torture and pain. But Yisrei, being that he didn't agree with them, and he ran away. Because that, it says in Masechta Sanhedrin that Yisrei's descendants sat in the Lishkas Hagazis. His descendants had the schus, and he had the schus that he had people that came from him that sat in the Sanhedrin. But definitely something more specific. If you look at Hilchas Rambam, Perek Beis, when it discusses what exactly are the qualifications to make someone that can sit on the Sanhedrin. It's one of the most important things in Yiddishkeit, to have a Sanhedrin, the different amounts of Sanhedrin, but what are the 7 qualifications? And it says it's Meforshim in the Torah. From my count, 4 of the 7 exact qualifications are quoted from our Parsha, Anshe Chayil, Anshe Emes, Sone Batza, Yerele Kim. These 4 things that Yisra gave advice asked for advice. Sometimes it's not something that is called upon, and he went out of his comfort zone and gave it to his son-in-law either way. And these 4 things about what it means to be a proper Jewish judge, to be a proper Jewish leader, come specifically from Yisro, from our parsha. So the directive to have a Sanhedrin isn't from this parsha, but I think the connection for the Lebanon inside, I think, is definitely something incredibly powerful. And what I found afterwards, the comments from Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon was something that was mind-blowing. The extent that they would go to save a Yiddish neshama, to save a Yiddish guf, that even Rabbi Shimon Ben Gamliel said what they were doing was terrible, that he didn't agree with them, that people would actually continue going around marauding and maybe even killing people. But Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon stood steadfast in their belief that they would have made sure, and the Gemara has a shtickle shtakavataria about what would be their conversations and how they would confuse the Edom to make sure that they would not have to put them to death, God forbid, in their eyes. And it reminded me of the story, which is an unbelievable story that the Rebbe said many times about the Rabbanim Mitam, which I'm sure most of you know, but I think it's definitely appropriate to repeat again and give a little background. Excuse me if this goes a little long. As we all know, the Yidden in Russia, the former Soviet Union, where most of our grandparents come from, were subject to terrible laws and terrible living environments in the Pale of Settlement. And in Tovkov Pevav in 1825, right after Tsar Nicholas became the Tsar, he actually instituted a decree that every single city needs to have a crown-appointed rabbi, an agent from the state, and their main objective and their main directive was to document all of the births, deaths, marriages in the community, and obviously to keep them an insider perspective for the crown into every single Yiddish shtetl. What ended up happening, the Yidden obviously did not appreciate this, and they did not want this to be the case. So they still had their real Rabbanim, and then they had the Rabbanim Mitam, which were the Rabbanim on behalf of the government. You had agents of the state, agents that were loyal to the Tsar, and then you had the Rabbanim who were obviously loyal to Torah. And throughout the years, things got progressively or regressively worse. In 1847, they actually opened up rabbinical seminaries, not like, in Morristown, the Talmudic seminary, which were trying to educate these Rabbanim Mitam that they should start becoming the norm. And it was reflected, obviously, of the ideals of the Haskalah movement and the Maskilim, and it was quite powerful. Every 5 years, they had a rabbinical conference to discuss these issues. The Rebbe Rashab was obviously vehemently opposed to this idea that that rabbis should go to school, they should learn Russian, that they should learn how to communicate these things, they shouldn't learn any secular studies as they were doing in these rabbinical schools. And the Rebbe Rashab fought for many, many years, to such an extent that there were these conferences going on with the Rabbanim Mitam in front of the government that were obviously slandering the real Rabbanim. And it got to such a point where things were in a very dire position. And the Rebbe Rashab issued a kol koreh, and he begged that the people, all the Rabbanim, the next rabbinical conference that would happen, the state did not allow, the government, the crown did not allow Rabbanim to get together without an official permission from the government. So the Rebbe Rashab couldn't get together with the Gedolei Yisrael at the time. And he issued a kol koreh begging the people, begging all the leaders of the communities, the Askanim, that by the next big Asifa, there should be a big Asifa, and they should try to get real Gedolim, people who were real Rabbanim, not Rabbanim Mitam, to come together. And he worked tirelessly, and it was a full-time job for many, many years. And finally, in Tafresh Ayin in 1910, after many, many long years of fighting, there was a very famous Asifa in St. Petersburg. And the Rebbe Rashab managed to get together some of the Gedolei Yisrael. Reb Chaim Ozer was there, the Radatz was there, Reb David Tzvi, Reb Chaim Brisker was there. And it was an extremely moving and powerful event. And a suggestion was brought up even by the Gedolei Yisrael that in order to eliminate these two Rabbanim, that we have a Rabbanim Mitam and a true emissary of, that the Rabbanim should learn at least basic Russian. They should learn how to read and write, how to speak, and then it won't be such a big deal. The Rebbe Rashab was incredibly opposed to this idea, and he instead suggested that there should be an officer hired by the Kehillah that could document these things, but for a Rav not to learn Al Taras HaKodesh and for a Rav to do these things is ankegen everything that we believe in. After these rumors that the Frumme religious Rabbanim were not backing down, a message came from the Minister of Interior, Stolpen, at the time, and he said that if these zealots continue and don't stop their opposition to the Rabbanim Mitam and this entire movement, then there will be pogroms in 101 cities, which tragically was a common occurrence at the time. And all the other Rabbanim were terrified by this. And if they spoke up, they subtly spoke up against this. The reason we have a lot of these stories documented is because a distant cousin of the Rabbeim was actually one of these Rabbanim Mitam. His name was Mr. Yitzchak Schneerson. He was the Rav of Chernigov. And just as a side note, Agav, one of these more famous Rabbanim Mitam was a man by the name of he was actually a big Talmud Chacham who worked with the Rebbe Rashab in the Baelish trial. His name was Yaakov Maza. Yaakov Maza was the chief rabbi of Moscow during the Baelish trial, and the Rebbe Rashab helped him with his defense, and he was conversely also the great-grandfather of Jackie Mason. But back to the story at hand, the Rebbe Rashab stood up. His life and the life of many different Yidden all around the Pale of Settlement were tremendously in peril at this time period. And the Rebbe Rashab said one of the most powerful things that have been said in front of the crown ever, if I would say. The Rebbe said, our bodies are the only things that were sent to Golus. Our neshavos were never sent to Golus. We must state unequivocally with unbridled pride that we are Yidden and we're proud to be Yidden. And this is something that we can never come to a compromise with. And our Rabbanim, we will never sacrifice their integrity. The Rebbe Rashab, after speaking with so much emotion, fainted. The Rebbe Rashab, right after this, after inciting a riot in the eyes of the Russians, was placed under house arrest in his hotel in Petersburg. And the Reb Chaim Brisker came to visit the Rebbe, and he came to see the Rebbe Rashab, and the Rebbe Rashab was crying. And the Reb Chaim Brisker walks in, he says, Lubavitcher Rebbe, was weinst du? Why are you crying? And he said, we did everything we could do. Now it's up to the Eibishter. And the Rebbe Rashab looked at him and he gave him a mashal. He says, there's two ways of looking. There's two types of personalities when it comes to business, when it comes to commerce. There's the Baal Bus and there's the Baal Asik. The Baal Bus, the Baal Asik works from 9 to 5. He collects his paycheck, he goes home. There's a fire in the warehouse or the IRS is coming after them. He sleeps quietly and he goes to sleep and he says, it is what it is. I'll get another job. The Baal Bus The balabas, it means everything to him. His whole lev and nefesh is involved in his business, in his commerce. And after 5 o'clock, the job doesn't end. And before 9 o'clock, the job already began. And there's two ways for us to look at this. And the Rebbe Rashab told Reb Chaim Brisker, there's two ways of us of looking at the future of Yiddishkeit. There's two ways of looking at it, either as a balabas or as a balisik. And I think that message to us is incredibly powerful, like the message of Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Tarfon. The extent that we're going to go to save Yiddish and Neshama. Obviously, these days we're not fighting for our gufim or probably even our neshamas, but we definitely could look at everything that we do, the learning that we do, the Gemara that we learn, the shlichus that we do, the mitzvahim that we go on, the tzedakah that we give. We could view it as our Yiddishkeit as a, God forbid, as an angle, as a Baal Asik, or we can do it as a Baal Bas, where we give it our all. And if we actually take that to heart and we try living with that reality, our prism and our perspective of Yiddishkeit and everything around us and our business and our Yiddishkeit will obviously flourish. And the Mirz Hashem will live up to this ideals and these standards, and we'll be zeichet to the coming of Mashiach. Gentlemen, have a good night.
Wow, Yeshua, Yossi. That was very, very, very inspiring. Definitely well prepared, and a lot to live up to. Yeshua. Continuing on this short but sweet evening of chizuk in Limud Torah. I just also want to remind everybody who's not yet holding with the Siyum that the idea is to learn, to have a kviyas in learning, and don't be nispal, don't get distraught that you're not necessarily with the group and drop out. As long as you're learning, as long as you're being involved, that's the idea, that we should all get involved in learning in some sort of structured way. And if there's any way that the Limud Torah Inc. can, so to speak, help out or encourage or strengthen your learning, if it's a chaversa or it's a different shir, we're Mirz Hashem starting to hopefully post more of the other different shiurim that are out there. Baruch Hashem, the Snagdim did a good job for us, set up some pretty serious shiurim, different lengths, different styles, and they're readily available. They're not exclusive. Our share is not exclusive to be used. I want to give a big shout out to Rabbi Klein. But of course, people have different times, different levels, different availabilities. So use it, and the idea is just to learn Gemara in a structured way. So we thank Yossi for that beautiful connection with Gemara Makis and the end of our parak, and the connection with this week's parsha, and in general we saw it's really cool. So moving on, we want to call on a friend of mine, actually here in Long Island, a shliach from Long Island who has been outspoken in regards to certain aspects of life that some people like to keep quiet, and shares it with the world. If he can help somebody, if he can help out a shliach or another member of Anash to in any aspect of life, he's usually out there to help. And there's a specific time he spoke about Limud Torah being a anchor for him in his life. So without further ado, please pay attention. Short and sweet, Rabbi Mendy Teldon from Long Island.
Thank you. No, the Ami magazine, those that get it, there's a Dvar Malch, there's the beginning, the Dvar Torah, and then there's the feature article, and then there's the human experience. So Yossi, thanks for being the feature article, and I'm gonna do the human experience component over here. I'll after the Rebbe talking, and then Yossi. So I don't have I don't feel any responsibility to be teichendik at all. I'm just going to share my thoughts on the matter and what worked for me, and hopefully someone here can benefit. And Pearson, if you're falling asleep, turn your camera off. You're like in my shul, I have enough people that sleep while I talk. So either sit up or shut your camera. Fine.
1 second, Mendy, just everybody, we're all here together. For bringing, open your cameras. Mendy wants to see who you are so he can avoid you in the street next time he sees you. But seriously, open your cameras, get involved, say l'chaim.
All right. So here's a little bit of my experience. Went on shlichus 2004, married, one kid, life started getting busy. Baruch Hashem, we had a second kid on shlichus. I took over my father's mosid, so it was immediately busy. We took over a pre-existing mosid, so there wasn't really any time to build it up. It was happening, and I think I was, I don't know if that's a term. I think I was a chassidish shliach. I learned 5 years in Detroit. I thought I had my head. I know I had my head screwed on straight. I was a legitimate guy who wanted to do the right thing. And fast forward a couple years on shlichus, 3 kids, 4 kids, bills building up, and I realized I don't know at what point I realized, but Torah was not part of my day-to-day regimen. Completely not. Not just I didn't learn Gemara, I didn't learn Chassidus. I had a chavrusa, which was defined by the fact that we both rotated in missing the predetermined time that we were supposed to call. One day I missed, the next day he missed, and then we would, every Yom Paga we'd recommit to miss each other's phone call, and that was the extent of our chavrusa. And probably 3-4 years into shlichus, I wasn't doing chitas Rambam. I wasn't learning. My Torah consisted of looking something over for a sermon on Shabbos, and that's really what it was. And it wasn't purposeful, and it wasn't. It just life got in the way of life. Life really got in the way of life. It got to a point I was falling asleep on my Rambam, so that's like a waste of time. That's a genuine waste of time. Not only that, but it's like you're not learning, so it's actually a chayiv kardas for wasting time at that point of time. So it's better not to learn Rambam. Chumash, Tanya, Kuntres Achron, it's hard. The whole thing, I was at a point, I wasn't a 15-year-old bacher who wanted to do good. I was a 25, 26-year-old guy who needed to maximize my time. I was wasting it on trying to fall asleep on a Rambam. It just wasn't worth it. So I kind of just over time just moved away from it. Not only that, but at that point, how did I occupy in the car? There was a moment many years ago, it sticks out of my mind, that I realized I would obsessively, I would often listen to talk radio, Mashpia Hayadua, Mr. Limbaugh of blessed memory, and Liminayim, other such people. And there was a point I realized that there was a conversation in Shul amongst Balabatim about a political topic. And it was a topic that Torah has a very strong opinion about it. And I realized that my response was basically the talk show host, like it wasn't a Torah shita that I was sharing. It was information that I had accumulated that I was like, really, is that what I was thinking? Is that really what I believe? And it broke. It was a shocker to me that I realized that I'm not talking what I know is true, but I'm a product of the information I consume. It didn't change anything. I still listened to talk radio, and I still did what, I still didn't go back to Chitas Hamam, but it was a moment that I realized, hey, there maybe something's off a little bit. I definitely was not going to do Perek Echad Rambam, because where I come from, Perek Echad Rambam is like from Misnagdim or Balit Shuver or Chatzar Shalom Goyim. They do Perek Echad Rambam. I'm a 3 Prakim Rambam guy. The fact that I don't do 3 Prakim anymore was Nishna Gei Lepoil. Perek Echad I don't do. I am not doing Gimel Prakim. Doesn't matter. That's a detail. That's a nuance. But I'm definitely not going to do Perek Echad. And all the other Limud Atei Gemara Zicher I don't do. That Misnagim do that. And I had a reason, a rationale for basically continuing the lifestyle that I was living, that I really wasn't learning Torah, and I was just going through the motions. I didn't say Chitas Rambam for about 10 years, for a full 10 years. I think it started in the beginning. I probably took a towel to the mikveh or something, Achman Litzlan. Then I didn't do Shnai Mikra, and then it had progressed from there. And there was close to a decade that I didn't do Chitas Rambam. And you can only imagine when I would sit with Chavedim and Fabring, I felt like a total fake, a total imposter. What am I, who am I fooling? Who am I fooling? But Chitas and Rambam, it's like a lot of stuff. Limud Torah, Chassidus, Torah is Bligvul. And I can't start. What am I going to start with? What am I going to start with? Like when I start learning, look at the Sikhs, but I don't learn Rambam. Like I'm going to start doing Chitas, but Rambam is more important than Chitas because Darsh. Like there's always, like there's never a good moment to start. So I just stayed at 0. I remember 5.5 years ago, it was my birthday was like the worst day of the year because that was like the day that I had to make a hachlata to learn, and I knew I was going to like not do it. So I remember my birthday is a few days after Pesach. My family was in town. I was talking to my brother, Mike Moshe, my brother Moshe, the shliach in Chicago. I said, Moshe, like my birthday's coming up. I dread this moment. Like I got to make a commitment for the year that I'm just setting myself up for failure. What do I do? And he said something to me very simplistic, which I could have said myself, but I just never applied it to myself. He said, man, you talk to yourself like you're your own balabas. Talk to yourself like you're a congregant who wants to start getting involved in Torah. What would you tell a guy who walks in and says, hey, I want to learn Torah, I want to connect with Chassidus? What would I say? So you're right, pretty simplistic idea. And I said, you know what, I'm going to resolve. If I was to talking to a balabas, I would tell him to commit to learning Perek Echad Rambam and read it in English. Meaning when I'm 35 years old, I'm not pretending to learn 3 Perek Rambam. I'm just not. I'm not even going to pretend to learn Perek Echad. Open an English Rambam and just read the English. It's actually interesting stuff. And I resolve, you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And I actually didn't commit to do it for a year. I committed to do it for a month. And I opened it up and I learned today, I've just read the English. And I was like being judgmental of myself the entire time. What a letdown I am, that this is where I'm at in life, that I'm reading in English. I think I was even holding a chayenu. Don't tell anyone, but like I was holding a chayenu, like maybe even hiding the chayenu inside my Dvar Malchus, that you shouldn't suspect me of, actually reading English, needing the English. So I did it a day, a week, a month, and I did Rambam. Like I learned Rambam. It was like fascinating stuff. It's like really interesting stuff. And I did it for an entire year, and I didn't miss a year. I didn't miss a day for the entire year. And it was a momentum builder. And I started learning Perek Echad Rambam like it was a thing. I actually missed one day. It was Yom Kippur. We do Yom Kippur at a hotel, and I got to the hotel and I forgot to bring a sefer, and it was just 11 o'clock at night, and there was no Rambam to be found. And I found a chitas. I did a chitas. I wasn't doing chitas then. I couldn't find a Rambam, so I just didn't do Rambam. But whatever. Shtickle shegig. The next day I did both prakim, but I did an entire year. Comes the next year, my brother, same Pesach, we're back together. Moshe's like, like, how did it go? Like, you know what, Moshe, it actually worked. It actually worked. And I'm like, I'm almost dreading like the follow-up question. Like, what are you gonna do now? Like, I can't do that. I can't obligate myself that now that I did one well, I got to do like the next thing. But he says, what would you tell your balabas? What would you tell your balabas? And I said, you know what, you're right. And I committed to learning Tanya Chitas in English, just reading the English. And I did it. It's actually like fascinating stuff. Now, together with that, I excused myself and I told myself that the rough days of Igeres HaKodesh and at the end over there, whatever, you're just not going to get it. And don't beat yourself up that you read it in English and didn't understand it. Because it built on itself. And the next year I added Chumash. And there's a fascinating thing. That year I made a Siyum on Rambam, a real Siyum, like a real Siyum. Like I finished the entirety of Rambam back to where I started. And those that, in the back of the made a shir, the shiurim are with a number. So it was shir number 513. That was the shir number. And I went full circle back to shir 513. There was an excitement. There was a legitimate excitement that I'm actually making a Siyum on Rambam. The next year, Simchas Torah, I actually did a Simchas Torah, like in the literal sense. Like I finished the Torah. I read the entirety of the Torah. And the fact that I allowed myself, I accepted that reality, that I don't do Gimel Prakim. I really don't. No matter how much I want to convince myself, I don't do it. I don't want to dabble. Zevi, tell me if I'm. We'll do it at the end. I can't. GPS teaches you if you're lying about where you are, you'll never get anywhere. And I had to really accept where I was. I am a guy who doesn't learn Torah, and I'm a guy who doesn't do Gimel Prakim. However much I think I'm a guy who's supposed to be doing Gimel Prakim, I don't. And not only that, English is my first language, and I learned better in English than in Hebrew. So read the English. I don't know if you've seen, there's a video that a lady goes by the Rebbe for dollars, and she tells the Rebbe she committed to learning Chitas, and she says to the Rebbe, I'm learning it in English. And the Rebbe says, there's absolutely no reason to do it in Hebrew. And I felt like so validated after 2 years of doing it, 3 years. I was like, yeah, like that was such a cool moment. Like I felt like a guy, I felt like a lesser than chassid because I'm reading in English. I was like, the point is to learn it, read it. So over the course of time, Baruch Hashem, and I don't say this in a braggadocious way, I say this passion to share it. In the last 5.5 years, I have, besides that one Yom Kippur, I haven't missed a day at Rambam, and I haven't missed a day of Chitas either. But I can come home 2 a.m. from wedding, I'm not going to miss it. When I was in yeshiva, I'd fall asleep on a Rambam. When I was 30, when I was 25, I would fall asleep on a Rambam. I don't fall asleep on a Rambam because it just become part of my thing. It's part of my thing. Just part of my thing. And I'll even say, let's say Tehillim. Finally got to a place to say Tehillim, the Yom Tehillim. Baruch Hashem, I have 6 kids. With my kapitel, my Riv kapitel, and the Rebbetzins kapitel, it's like half my day. I feel like it's saying Tehillim. And I don't read Tehillim well, and it takes me time. So I wouldn't say my kids' kapitel, I wouldn't say my, Kufya test the year, 2 years ago, like I didn't even think of doing it, but it's just too overwhelming. So last year I committed every birthday of one of my kids, I added their kapitel. Like just a baby step. So the next kid's birthday came around. There's 3 kids that the birthdays were in a month. I added a kapitel, and it just became part of my thing. But I was only able to do that when I accepted the fact that I'm not saying their kapitel. If I convince myself, no, I say their kapitel when I have time, when I'm by the oil, whatever, I say, no, this is the reality, and let me grow from here. So Gemara is definitely not my thing. My favorite piece of Gemara is any piece of Gemara that has 2 dots. You know those 2 dots? The 2 dots that imply that no matter how little you were paying attention till now, we're starting fresh, and it's a new sugya, and therefore you can forget anything that happened the last blot. We're starting new. It's not my strong point, Gemara. I was sitting by the oil 4 years ago, and a guy sitting next to me says, you know what? He learns an Amud a day. An Amud a day. No, I'm like, an Amud a day, that's pretty cool. I can do that. I know an Amud a day. Maybe I'll do an Amud every other day. I came home. I have an art school shas. I got my shver, got me from my chassan, a big nice shas. And I looked for the easiest masech. I think I started one of the masechtas of 25, 30 blot. And I did an Amud. And I made myself 2 conditions. If I was going to launch into this endeavor. Number 1, I'm reading the English. I'm not in this to become a Baki B'Shas. I'm not in this to steig, and I'm not in this to be able to throw Vertelach and throw street cred with the Litvish guy at Mincha that I can quote Gemara. I'm here to learn Torah and all the milas associated with it. So the 2 conditions I made for myself was A, I am reading the English and Hebrew occasionally, and B, if I get to a hard piece, I'm going to go through it once. If it's a very difficult piece, I'm skipping it. And I did that. And I did an Amud, another Amud, and Baruch Hashem, it built up. In the course of a year and a half, I finished 7 Masechtas. For a guy who never learned Gemara. I did 7 Masechtas over the course of a year and a half, just simply by allowing myself to do it at my pace. I had a baby soon thereafter, another child, so I stopped learning it then, but I shifted to other things. But I want to add one more thing. the mila, the beauty of Limud Torah is that it changes the way I think. And that's how all of us hopefully will be affected with it. And I'm going to share, I know, Zevi, you're going to cut me out here, but I have a brief story that just happened. And I want to share with you how Torah has affected it. This is, so Baruch Hashem, I've been learning the last 5-6 years, and it has grown to be more and more involved in Limud Torah. So we bought a house 3 weeks ago, December 30th. A week beforehand, I was asked by the lawyer to wire the money into his escrow account, and I wired the money into his escrow account. And 2 days later, I got another email from him saying to wire money to his escrow account. And I called him like, what do you mean? You just told me to wire money into your escrow account. And he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Fast forward, we realized I was the victim of an email fraud, and I wired $135,000 to a crook. True story. December 24th, I realized it an hour before Shabbos on December 24th. And I ran to the bank at 3:30. The bank was already closed for Kratzmach. Bank of America, where I wired the money, was closed. And I called the cops. They came to my house a minute before Shkia. I signed the affidavit. I didn't even have time to say anything. I just signed it. I said, now I'll tell you the story. You can fill out this Kratzmach, December 24th, 25th, whatever. Monday morning comes, and the money's gone. The money is legit gone. The money is legit gone. And every day that goes by is another, lowers the probability of it actually getting back. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 days, and the money's gone. And everyone I talk with at all levels of government and FBI and fraud and it's gone. So 2 points. One, not relevant, not part of this conversation, but the kids there, I committed. I told my wife, I agreed with my wife, and I came to the conclusion that the money's gone, and if any money comes back, it's gefunden and geld, and you have to give meiser on that. So we're committing that any money that comes back, we'll give meiser. And I preempted it, and I called Eli Rosenfeld in Florida, who has a fund to help shluchim. Said, Eli, I want this money going to chasanas, shluchim chasanas, and God willing, the money will come back, and I'm committing this money, and I'm prepaying. I'm giving you $2,000 as a prepayment, with trust that it's going to happen. So Baruch Hashem, a week later, the detective called us that they found $113,000, and they didn't send it back, but they're sending it back. And I heard this morning that the problem. So immediately, actually, when the detective called me, I called my wife, I called the oil, and I called Eli Rosenfeld and sent him $9,300, which I don't have, but I sent it to Eli Rosenfeld, and I told him, tell the Eibishter that there's another $2,300 waiting for him to pay for another shliach's wedding somewhere as soon as he sends me that other $23,000. So today we hopefully got the besura that money's coming back as well. But that's not the point. The point is the last 3 weeks since I got this information, December 20th. So it's 3 weeks, about 4 weeks. Yeah, it's actually been a beautiful process, and I don't think I stressed out. I stressed out 1 minute the day before the closing, and I didn't have the money, and I called 5 friends, and I put together in about 10 minutes $150,000 of loans just to get to the closing. That was the only minute I was nervous if I was going forward. I genuinely wasn't nervous the entire time. And my wife, my kids, it's been a beautiful experience losing $136,000. And the first 2.5 weeks, we genuinely lost it. It was gone. And I was able in retrospect to look back and say, the Torah that I learned was no longer theory. Everything that I learned in Torah about betachin, about hashgacha pratis, about tevat, all the concepts that I've been learning in the last 5 years beforehand, all was a build-up to that moment. And people were like, "You okay? You okay?" Like, yeah, I'm fine. I was genuinely fine. And my kids, it was a chinuch for them on the highest level of going through a situation like that, where there was just, there's a level of serenity and just trusting the Eibush is going to work it out. Balabatim that knew about it were blown away. And I didn't share with them in a hey, look, I'm having, but like, whatever, it is. So the beauty of Limud Torah in my life at this point, besides the knowledge that I have, is that when applied in real life, it's a game changer. It changes everything that we live. It becomes a very different reality, and that can't be done by listening to Mr. Limbaugh. Not just Mr. Limbaugh, but just we are a product of the information we consume. and you're able to consume the Eibishter's information, it really shifts your entire outlook at life. Bless you guys.
Oh, shukach. L'chaim Mendy.
Bless you. Shkayach for putting this together.
Okay. Just to conclude, I want to thank everybody who joined tonight, and just a few ideas for everyone who's still here and whoever's going to watch this later on. We all have friends. We all have chaverim that can benefit from learning Limud Torah in a consistent, structured way. I know I'm a little biased, a little involved in this endeavor, but now that I am, when I'm calling a friend or when I'm involved with somebody who's, who I know a little bit, it comes up, just think about it. Think about learning in this way. We have it all set up already for you. We can get you a chaversa, and that doesn't only have to apply to me or anybody who's involved in any way, but I think all of us have that influence on good friends, that you don't have to be a rabbi or a shliach or just a good friend who wants to reach out and make this happen. As you know, most of us here are not big lamdanim, not big Gemara learners, but I think this strikes a chord. And we want to wish a mazel tov for all those who did finish the first parak. We also want to wish a hatzlacha on those who are not yet there, and will be there very soon. And on to the next parak, Mirza Hashem should be with much hatzlacha, and all those who are involved in the mitzvah, look out in the mail. So it's a little something is coming in the mail that just give a little inspiration for the family, for the kids, something that should keep you going for a little bit. And Bigash Shekach, the Yosef Tuvia, to Shneur Eichhorn puts tremendous amount of work into putting the shiurim in a consistent way, in a organized way. We have the Shalos Chazara to make sure that we can properly learn it and maintain the learning that we have. And everybody here. So a gute Nacht, l'chaim, l'chaim. Keep up the good work, and Mashiach now.
Skaltse, großen Skaltse. Verstehst du ganz, du spielst den Rest, das ist rausgekriegt jetzt.
Ja.